again, everybody, and welcome to another segment of Hollywood Memories. I'm Dan Roberts, the publisher of The Vegas Voice, and I have the great pleasure of sitting with and interviewing my favorite columnist, the other woman in my life, and that is Miss Beverly Washburn.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone.
I am so glad you're still here, and you're still doing these videos with us. And I want to do something, as I always say, a little bit different this time, because in your remarkable career of everything you've done, we found 3 TV segments that you did that if you even tried to do it on TV again, your career would be shot. I mean,
Totally inappropriate.
totally inappropriate.
But for the time, it was okay.
Okay, let's start with, you did a segment on Wagon Train, and that was a TV segment that was back in October of 1958. For those of you who have no idea, what was Wagon Train? What was the TV show about itself? You recall?
Well, it starred Ward Bond. Wonderful. He was the wagon master, and every week they would have a different guest star, and it would be, various things that would go on as people were in their wagon trains
Heading west.
across country.
Yeah, it was a country and western show. And for those, I'm sure every senior they've watched Wagon Train. It was just great. Ward Bond was tremendous. And the thing is, he got his job through John Wayne, because John Wayne helped him, I believe, or it was his best friend.
Yeah, I guess so. And he was such a nice man. I think we did a segment on him not too long ago because he he had a habit of swearing all the time. And he didn't even realize it because he was used to being around a lot of guys. And so he kept swearing in front of me, and they were going to pull me off the set unless he stopped.
And when you say they, you had a welfare?
Well, they had a welfare worker. They always do when they have a minor on the set,
Right.
because you have to have 3 hours of schooling each day, and you can't do overtime. You have to have an hour for lunch, and you have to have breaks and so on and so forth. And so they called them welfare workers. They were actually board certified school teachers from the Los Angeles Board of Education, and they had the authority that they were in charge of the, whatever minor
Right.
that they were there for. And so if what happened is Ward Bond kept swearing. He didn't mean to. He didn't even know he was doing it. But she went to the director and said, if he uses one more cuss word in front of her, I will pull her off the set.
So those welfare workers really had a tremendous amount of power and authority on
Absolutely.
all these TV shows. And they didn't like anybody, or they didn't like the segment, they can change it, can't they?
Right. They have that much clout and authority. So they had to talk to Ward Bond. And of course, he came over and, apologized profusely. And it didn't bother me. I didn't even know.
You didn't even know those words. You know them now, though, don't you? Yeah.
So, but he gave me a wonderful photo of himself after the show that he autographed, and that I have hanging in my home, and it meant the world to me.
He was a good guy.
He was terrific.
Okay. Let's talk about another good guy, because you did that show, as I mentioned, on October 22, 1958, and you had the great pleasure of working with Lou Costello for Abbott and Costello.
I was so thrilled when I got that role because I was a fan of Abbott and Costello, and I was just hoping that he would be as, nice and fun to work with, and I couldn't have asked for more. He was just such a wonderful man.
And for those of you under 60, let's say, who have no idea who he was part of the Abbott and Costello, Who's on First. And that's just an American classic.
Yeah, and this was his only dramatic role, and he was absolutely wonderful in the role. But the storyline was a little iffy.
And let's talk like a little iffy. Let's talk about the storyline so I can demonstrate that there's no way you can have another TV show like this segment.
No, because in today's world, it would be totally inappropriate.
And why would that be?
Well, because he played a drifter, and I was a little runaway girl, and we become friends, and then we are stowaways on the wagon train, and we travel together, and he's an alcoholic.
He's an alcoholic, too. Let's add that to this.
So to have, in today's world, you certainly couldn't have a little girl traveling with a man. It would be totally inappropriate. But back then, it was totally innocent, and nobody even thought twice.
And there was never an issue of the fact that, wait, there's this little girl, and you played Midge, who was with this alcoholic drifter, stowaways, and you were part of the wagon train, and well, that seemed perfectly fine.
I know, isn't that funny?
Isn't that something else?
But at the time, it seemed normal, because it was absolutely innocent, of course, but you just couldn't do that.
You couldn't even come close to that.
Well, it would be inappropriate to
say the least.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, as you mentioned, it was Lou Costello's only dramatic role. I mean, he was by far one of the greatest comedians ever with Bud Abbott. Okay, how did he do in the dramatic role?
He was incredible. I believe you can see it online, probably on YouTube or whatever. And he was wonderful. But he had a hard time memorizing his dialogue.
Go ahead.
Because when he did Abbott and Costello, he pretty much had free reign that he could ad-lib and all that. But he had to stick to the script. So every time he would flub a line, instead of just stopping or whatever, he would look right into the camera and say, "So, how are you?" Yeah. And he did that every time, and it would always just crack me up.
And you never got annoyed over it?
No, he was wonderful. And in one of his books that was written later on, he just gave me the nicest compliment, and because they talked about his role doing a dramatic role.
Right.
And he said there was a little girl by the name of Beverly Washburn that was in it. And without her, I couldn't have done it. And that just
made you cry again all over again. Okay. So
touching.
You never went to Lou Costello and said, "What the hell are you doing? Can't you memorize any lines? Come on." I mean, you're a professional. You knew your lines, right?
Yeah.
So when he flubbed it, you never yelled at him.
No. In fact, I think sometimes he almost did it intentionally because it would always crack me up when he'd go, "So, how are you?"
Yeah.
Every time. Yeah, he was great. I miss him.
And that was an innocent segment.
It was totally. And then there's a murder and everything, and they think that he did it. And I have my crying scene because I know that he didn't do it. And it was written by Harry Von Zell. So the people that are our age might remember the Burns and Allen show, and he was the announcer on Burns and Allen, Harry Von Zell, and he actually wrote the episode.
He wrote the episode.
And he was in it as well.
Again, it's totally innocent. Now let's go to another celebrity, someone who is an American classic, and that is a gentleman by the name of Jack Benny. You knew Jack Benny very well, didn't you?
I was very blessed. Yes, I met him when I was like 7 and did his live TV show in which I play Margaret
Truman. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just...
You're dating yourself when you say that.
I know. It was just a little funny bit where they have me planted in the audience and I come up and ask for his autograph. And it was scary for him, he told me later, because it was done live. And we had rehearsed it, but never with an audience. So he didn't know if I would suddenly get stage fright or forget my lines. And he said, or worse, if he forgot his lines, he was afraid it would throw me off because back in those days, it was live.
Right.
So whatever you did came on. There's no tape delay.
And he really took very good care of you. We have a picture of you at your birthday. How old were you then? Do you recall?
It was my 18th birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And done with that crazy hairdo.
Yeah.
And there's with the cake and everything. He was the most generous, thoughtful man. And of course, I write about him in my book, Real Tears Take Two. And he was so generous and wonderful.
And you would never think that Jack Benny would do something that would never be done on TV again.
Right.
It was something. Again, let me tell the audience. This was Jack Benny at the Hollywood Palace with you and Sammy Davis Jr. And this goes back to January of 1968. And tell us a little bit about the skit that you did.
Well, this was, a kind of a slapstick kind of thing where we play sisters, the three of us. And he pretends as though he had never seen our act before. But he was telling the audience that with their permission, he'd like us to audition, in front of them. And if we're good, he would have us back. And so it's all a setup.
And what were the name of the sisters?
The Smithers sisters, because at the time, the Smothers brothers were quite popular. So that was our name.
So you did this act. And, I mean, there's a little bit of a scene of Jack Benny talking to you about you're the pretty one. And tell us about, he tried to get some answers out of you that you wouldn't give because he kept on asking you, you're so pretty and you're so wonderful. And you must have a lot of boyfriends.
Yeah. And then he says, how many do you have? And I say, I'd rather not say.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Why are you bashful?" And I say, "No, I'm married."
Yeah, that was it.
So, again, that you couldn't get away with.
And again, the reason why you couldn't get away with it is describe the three sisters, especially the last one.
Well, yeah, that was played by Iris Adrian and then Peggy Mondo. And throughout, she keeps complaining about her feet are hurting.
Good. She was somewhat heavy.
Yes, and they make some jokes that would be totally inappropriate in today's world.
Like fat shaming.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And it was all done in fun. It wasn't meant to be insulting or hurtful. And she was great with it. She didn't have a problem. She thought it was hilarious. But you couldn't do that in today's world. People would be offended and hurt and all that. But so that was another one of the shows that.
And yet you can still see this on YouTube. And I mean, I have to tell you, it is one of the funniest bits I've ever seen.
It's silly.
I mean, they have, and by the way, you showed off your dance moves,
Oh, well,
we're
we're supposed to be horrible dancers and horrible singers. And it was fun. But we actually played at the Sahara in Las Vegas.
with the same act.
And we played Lake Tahoe, and we toured all over the East Coast, and we were on the Hollywood Palace.
I mean, it's a very funny bit, except you can't do it again, especially at the end of the bit when what happens to the heavy one there?
Halfway through the dance, she falls, and then he has to try to pick her up, and his shoulder goes out. And I mean, it was just all in fun. But as you said, it would not be very good in today's world.
They wouldn't even let you do this now, would they?
No.
Now we get to my favorite role, the one that I always talk to Beverly about, because it was the most politically incorrect and unacceptable role you can imagine. And let me give you the background. This was from the TV show 4-Star Playhouse, and that was from 1952 to 56. And a little bit about the show. It was a rotating cast, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. Each week they would feature either Dick Powell, Ida Lupino, Charles Boyer, or David Niven. And this one was with Dick Powell. And
let me start with this. Now, this was an episode on April 12, 1956. Let's start with the title. It was called Autumn Carousel. Why was it called Autumn Carousel?
I have no idea. It had nothing to do with anything.
Nothing to do at all.
Not really. I mean, we stop at one point and go to a little fair, and we get on I don't know.
So to this day, you have no idea why it was called Autumn Carousel, as opposed to calling it politically inappropriate or people going to jail. But you did this segment, and again, under the cast name, you was second billing underneath Dick Powell.
I was very fortunate, and he was terrific to work with. I absolutely loved working with him.
And, Dick Powell was thrilled to do this segment because, again, on his CD, he has that picture of you, and he did the TV show.
Yeah, I was really grateful for that. But, the storyline is weird because I'm a little girl traveling by myself, and I happen to sit next to this strange man, and suddenly we're holding hands. I'm lighting a cigarette, and then we stop and take a later train, which makes no sense. I mean, looking back, but it was innocent. But now, I mean, wouldn't my parents be wondering about?
Or grandparents or somebody. But again, you also had a welfare worker there also. And that person had no problem with it.
No, because it was truly innocent. I mean, nothing happened.
Well, you couldn't show it on TV back then anyway, but it's...
I know, it's just kind of funny because in today's world, things are so different and everything's politically incorrect and everybody gets offended by the smallest thing. But it's just back then, it was, we're talking a lot of years.
We're talking 1956, but
yeah.
It's without you going on and on about how innocent it was and everything else. We can count all the, oh my God, segments in that show just from the fact of a 10-year-old girl going on a train from L.A. to Chicago.
Yeah, by myself.
By yourself. And the idea that Dick Powell tells you, listen, I really like you. Why don't we get off the train? Let's go to a fair and we'll take a later train. We'll catch a later train. And you said, okay.
I know. Oh my gosh.
And nobody seemed to care.
No, I know. It's pretty funny.
You look back on it now.
I know, it's comical.
And there's nothing about your divorced parents raising a stink or even, wait a minute, what's going on? And at the end of the show, they didn't even pick you up, did they?
No, they sent a chauffeur.
A chauffeur to pick you up. So working with Dick Powell, again, no problem at all.
No, oh, he was terrific.
He was really good.
Very nice man. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
So with all these shows that you've done, and you've done TV, movies, everything else, so far we found 3. If we keep on digging, will we find any more?
No, possibly. I don't know. But those stick out, don't they?
Without a doubt. And yet, when you look at it, at the time, nothing absolutely wrong at all.
Mm.
It just shows you how the world has changed, whether rightfully or wrongfully. But again, you wouldn't let your granddaughter go overnight on a train.
No, it seems a little odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't it? So, and it just shows you what a good sport Beverly is and how she puts up with me when I find all these things about her life. And as always, I thank you so much for allowing me to do this. We're going to find some more politically incorrect things that you've done. God only knows. There might be a warrant out for your arrest, good sake. So anyway, this is Dan Roberts with Miss Beverly Washburn saying we'll see you again next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dan.